It started with a faint scratching barely noticeable. Officer Ray Torres had heard it before, but mountain homes were old, and sounds came with age. He brushed it off as mice. Maybe squirrels. Nothing more, but Max didn't think so. Every night, right around 2 a.m., Max would wake up from his bed in the corner and stare at the ceiling, his ears perked, tail stiff. Not a sound came from him, just stillness, like he was waiting. Watching, Ray would mumble, "What's wrong, buddy?" Max wouldn't move. Then the scratching would begin. At first, it was soft like nails on wood. Then came the pacing, faint, slow. Ray went up to check once, flashlight in hand, and found nothing. Just dust, insulation, and boxes he hadn't opened in years. Just mice, he muttered. Nothing to get worked up about, but Max was getting worked up. He stopped eating full meals. He began pacing too, matching the sound overhead. And Ray, he started losing sleep. Max wasn't just any dog. He'd served next to Ray for 8 years on the force. He once took a bullet for him during a drug bust. The limp he carried was from that night. Max had been more than a partner, he was family. That's why Ray started listening. On the third night, the storm rolled in. Wind howled through the pines outside. Rain tapped on the windows like restless fingers. Lightning lit up the house in flashes. Max stood again. Right on cue, 2:01 a.m. this time, he growled. Ray sat up on the couch. "What is it, boy?" Max didn't move his eyes from the ceiling. Then the scratching came louder, more desperate, clawing. Ray's heart jumped. "Okay, that's not a mouse." Max let out a bark, sharp and sudden. Then another. Ray grabbed his flashlight again. "All right, let's check it out together." Max stayed at his side as they climbed the narrow stairs. Each step creaked. The air up there was colder, stale. Ray pushed open the attic door slowly. The beam from his flashlight swept across boxes, a folded stroller, old uniforms. Nothing moved. Max didn't go inside. He just stood at the threshold, staring at the far end of the attic. Ears alert. Ray stepped in. The scratching had stopped. He whispered, "You sure it came from up here?" Max gave a low whine. Ray tapped the ceiling, knocked on the walls. Everything felt solid. Maybe he was losing it. Stress, maybe. Too many night shifts. Too much silence. In this lonely cabin after leaving the city force. He turned back. False alarm. But just as he reached the stairs, scratch. It came from directly beneath his feet. Ray froze. Max growled again, low and steady. He stepped forward, sniffed the floorboards under an old trunk, then started pawing at it. Ray moved the trunk aside. "What is it, Max?" Max's nose pressed to a spot in the floor. Tap, tap, hollow. Ray's stomach dropped. That spot didn't sound like the rest of the attic. He crouched down, running his fingers along the floor. There a tiny seam, barely visible. He hooked his fingers underneath and pulled. A thin panel lifted. Dust rose. The smell was different. Damp, old. Ray pointed the flashlight down the dark hole. The beam didn't reach the bottom. Max stood beside him, eyes locked on the opening. Ray's voice came out shaky. "Someone's been in there." Then, from the darkness below, a whimper. Ray nearly dropped the flashlight. A sound, faint but real. Not the creak of wood, not the moan of wind. A whimper, like something was alive down there. Max let out another bark and tried to move toward the hole. Ray held him back. "Easy, buddy, easy." Ray's hand trembled as he pulled the panel all the way off, revealing a crawlspace below. The attic floor, no stairs. Just a black, gaping drop. The scratching began again, only this time, slower. As if whatever was down there knew they were listening. Ray looked at Max. "What have we found?" Max didn't bark again. He just stared into the dark, UNMOVING. And in that moment, Ray realized something Max had known all along. Something wasn't right in this house. And tonight, they'd just opened the first door to the truth. Ray didn't sleep that night. He sat on the attic floor for over an hour, staring down into the hidden crawlspace with Max by his side. The flashlight battery was running low, and every time he shined it into the hole, the darkness seemed to swallow it whole. But that whimper, it was still there, faint, tired, alive. Ray whispered, "There's something down there." Something. Breathing. Max let out a soft bark in reply. Ray sealed the opening with the wooden panel again. Not because he wanted to, but because he didn't know what else to do. It was 3 a.m. The storm outside had turned into a torrential flood. Climbing into an unknown crawlspace in the middle of a blackout storm didn't feel like the right move. Back downstairs, Ray placed 2 bowls of food on the floor, one for Max and one extra, just in case. Max didn't touch his. Instead, he sat near the fireplace, eyes fixed on the ceiling above, his body tense, his ears twitching at every creak. Ray poured himself a cup of cold coffee and sat across from him. You knew something was up, you tried to tell me. Max blinked slowly, like he understood. Ray ran a hand through his hair. What kind of place did I move into? This house had belonged to his old partner, Tom Whitaker. Tom had lived here after retirement and left it to Ray in his will. Ray had always thought of it as a peaceful gift, a cabin near the pines, a place to finally breathe, but now it felt like a lie wrapped in wood. By morning, the scratching had stopped. Ray tried calling animal control, but the storm had knocked out most cell towers in the area. His landline had static, no dial tone. The roads into town were likely flooded. He looked at Max. Looks like it's just us. Ray packed a flashlight, a rope, gloves, and a bottle of water. He made his way back up to the attic while Max followed, limping slightly. At the trapdoor, Ray hesitated. The air around it felt heavier. I need you to stay here, Max, he said. Let me check it out first. Max didn't like that. He whined, nudging Ray's leg with his nose. I'll be fine. I promise. Ray dropped the rope into the hole and slowly lowered himself into the dark. The crawlspace was narrow, only about 5 feet deep, with cold dirt beneath. His boots sank slightly into the damp earth. Then movement. 2 glowing eyes reflected his flashlight beam. Ray's breath caught. Hey there. The small shape backed into the shadows. He inched closer, staying low. As the light adjusted, he saw it clearly, a tiny puppy, fur-matted, ribs showing. It looked like it hadn't eaten in days. Ray reached out slowly. It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you. The pup didn't growl, just trembled. And then behind it, another shape, bigger, not moving. Ray raised the flashlight. What he saw made his heart twist. An older dog, curled tightly around the pup, barely conscious. Its breathing was shallow, its body scarred. Ray whispered, Dear God. He pulled off his jacket and wrapped the puppy first. It didn't fight. It just rested its head on his arm. Then he reached for the older dog. Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you out of here. She didn't move. Ray lifted her slowly, gently. She was light, too light. Bones under fur. Her eyes opened for a second, and he saw something in them. Fear and trust, like she knew he wasn't the monster. When Ray climbed out, Max was waiting. He rushed to the older dog first, tail wagging softly, nose working furiously. Then he moved to the puppy and did the same. Ray watched them, stunned. Max licked the puppy once, then nudged the older dog softly, like he was greeting an old friend. Ray stood there in silence. These dogs knew each other. Something about the way Max was reacting it wasn't curiosity. It was recognition. Ray knelt down beside them. What happened here? Max didn't answer, of course, but the look in his eyes said everything. He remembered. Ray sat on the attic floor with both dogs beside him, one limp and frail, the other a shaking bundle of fur nestled into his lap. Max remained close, occasionally sniffing and licking the older dog's ears, then nudging the puppy gently. It wasn't normal behavior. This wasn't just concern. This was familiarity. Ray whispered, You know them, don't you, Max? Miss A's didn't bark, just lay down with a soft huff. Eyes still locked on the older dog. Ray pulled out his phone, still no service. He examined the crawlspace again, looking for clues. The hole beneath the attic floor had no stairs, no ladder, just a square-shaped drop hidden under the trunk. How long had it been there? More importantly, why was it there? He grabbed the flashlight and crawled back down. This time he looked closely, not just for animals, but signs of people. The space was roughly 5 by 7 feet. The walls were wood, darkened by dampness. The floor was hard-packed dirt, except near one corner where it felt slightly hollow. Beneath, he knocked Thump, 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 tap. Hollow again. He began digging carefully with his hands. The dirt was damp and heavy, but something was definitely buried beneath it. About a foot down, his fingers brushed cold metal. He pulled up a rusted tin box. Inside, a folded, water-stained piece of paper and a small pink collar. The tag read, "Daisy." Ray's breath caught. "Daisy?" he whispered. He unfolded the paper, trying to make out the faded ink. Most of the writing had bled away, but 3 words were still legible. "She's still alive." Ray swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he closed the box. He glanced back at the opening, where Max sat staring down at him like a statue. There was something deeply wrong with this house. Something buried, literally and figuratively. Back upstairs, Ray laid both dogs on a pile of old towels. He carefully fed the puppy water through a plastic syringe, and then tried the same with the older dog. She barely responded, but her eyes fluttered open again. Max pressed his nose to hers. Ray whispered, "Daisy. Is that your name?" Her tail moved. Just once, a chill ran up his spine. Ray stood up and looked around the attic, searching. He began pushing boxes aside, dust flying in every direction. One after another, boxes filled with junk old uniforms, army medals, dog toys, newspaper clippings. Then he found it. Behind a stack of dusty photo frames and blankets was a second wooden panel, this one clearly installed after the house was built. The edges were too clean, too fresh. He knelt down and pried it open. Inside was a small compartment, no bigger than a suitcase. It smelled faintly of mold and something older, like forgotten time. Inside it was a small child's shoe, pink, muddy. Next to it, a torn photograph. Ray pulled it into the light. It showed a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, smiling ear to ear. She was holding a golden retriever tightly around the neck. Daisy. Ray knew it instantly. The scars, the eyes, it was the same. Dog lying on his floor, but the girl... He flipped the photo. A date, July 2013. A name, Ellie. His throat tightened. This wasn't a coincidence. Ray rushed down to the living room and dug through the old case files he had inherited from Tom Whitaker, his former partner. Tom had kept clippings, notes, even evidence copies from cases that never made it to court. Ray remembered that Tom had mentioned a missing girl once. Some cold case that haunted him until retirement. He found the folder yellowed, thick, labeled, case number 047EM. He opened it. Ellie Mae Carter. Age 7. Missing since July 14, 2013. Last seen walking her dog, Daisy, outside her house on Sycamore Trail. The report included a witness statement. She was walking toward the woods near the old ranger's cabin. Search parties found nothing. Daisy was never recovered. The case had gone cold in a week. Ray's hands shook as he read the last page. Investigator, Sergeant Thomas Whitaker. Case status, closed, presumed runaway. Ray's stomach turned. No, it didn't make sense. Tom had always been by the book, loyal, careful, but he was also a man who drank too much. A man who stopped trusting people. A man who'd spent too much time in the dark corners of this world. Ray whispered, "You knew? Didn't you, Max?" Max let out a quiet sigh and placed his head gently on Daisy's paw. Something was hidden beneath the surface. Ray could feel it like a splinter under skin. The attic wasn't just a hiding place. It was a prison, and the scratch marks on the trapdoor. Those weren't made by mice. They were made by a child or a dog trying to get out, trying to be heard. Ray stared at the photograph again. The little girl's eyes sparkled with life. And now, 10 years later, all that remained was a broken dog, a buried collar, and a trail of silence. Ray clenched his fists. We're not letting this stay buried. The moment the rain slowed and the light crept through the fog, he was back in the attic, kneeling at the trapdoor again, his flashlight freshly recharged, rope over his shoulder. He had to know more. Daisy and the puppy weren't just dumped here. Someone put them there and meant for them to stay. Max stood guard near the attic entrance, still limping but alert as ever. His eyes never left Ray, and his ears twitched. At every creak of the wood, Ray muttered, "Stay close, Max. If I yell, you bark." The crawlspace air hit him again, wet, musty, cold. He dropped in more carefully this time, feet touching the muddy floor with a soft squelch. He panned the flashlight across the wooden walls, searching for anything else, another hidden compartment, a clue? Anything, but the space was dead silent, except for one soft sound, breathing. It wasn't the sound of Max above, or the sleeping dogs he'd left wrapped in blankets. No, this was closer, slower. Ragged. Ray turned and saw it. In the far back corner, wedged between two wall beams, was a second hollow spot barely noticeable. The flashlight beam revealed a warped wooden panel, rotting from moisture. Something behind it moved. Ray's heart began to pound. He stepped closer and leaned down, pressing his ear to the wood. Scratch, whimper, breath. Ray jumped back. "There's more," he whispered. "There's something or someone still in there." He pulled his pocket knife and wedged it into the seams of the panel. The wood groaned in protest, swollen from years of moisture. With a grunt, he yanked. The panel cracked loose and fell forward into the dirt. Behind it, a space barely large enough for a child to sit. Inside it, a nest of torn blankets, scraps of paper, a plastic cup, and something Ray wasn't prepared for, a tiny stuffed rabbit. Gray and filthy, its button eyes dangling by a thread. Ray picked it up slowly, as if it might crumble. Then he saw what was beneath it, scratched into the wood with what looked like a rock or maybe even fingernails. "I miss my mom. Please help." "Me." Ray's legs gave out. He dropped to his knees. This wasn't a forgotten crawl space. This had been a cell, a prison for a child. Max barked sharply above. As if sensing Ray's heart collapse, Ray looked around, tears burning at the edge of his eyes. "How did no one know?" he whispered. "How did no one hear her?" He scanned the rest of the small space. In the corner was a rusted metal food bowl with dried crumbs. Next to it, a tiny handprint in the dirt. Ray's throat clenched. This wasn't just neglect. This was planned. Someone kept Daisy and Ellie here together. And when Ellie was gone, only Daisy remained. Trapped, he crawled back out slowly, cradling the stuffed rabbit in his hands. Max was waiting at the top of the attic stairs. When he saw the rabbit, he let out a soft whine and stepped forward to sniff it. His tail drooped. "You remember it, don't you?" Ray asked, his voice hoarse. "You were here before? You knew this girl." Max turned and walked toward the living room, then stopped. Looked back, waited. Ray followed, confused. Max stood near the fireplace, then moved toward a corner of the living room Ray had never paid attention to. There, behind a low wooden shelf, was a warped section of paneling. Max pawed it once, twice, then looked back. Ray knelt, moving the shelf aside. Dust scattered. Another seam in the wall, another hidden space. He pushed on it. Nothing. Then he found a small latch under the baseboard. Click. The wall creaked open like a hidden door, revealing a dark vertical shaft descending into the earth, narrow, steep, and lined with stone. A hidden basement? Ray's pulse pounded. Whoever built this, whoever used it. They didn't want anyone to ever find it, and they almost got away with it. Ray turned to Max. "You've been carrying this for years, haven't you?" "You knew." Max sat down, quietly watching. Ray stared into the darkness of the shaft and whispered, "We're going deeper." Ray didn't go down into the shaft right away. He couldn't, not yet. The crawlspace had already shaken him. He needed answers, but he also needed help. And right now, the only living creature he trusted completely was Max. The morning sun peeked weakly through the cabin's fog-stained windows. The older dog, Daisy, still lay curled in the corner of the attic, barely breathing. The puppy, now a little steadier, kept close to her. Ray had given her a soft name in his mind, Maple, because of her light brown fur and gentle eyes, but it was Max who had the answers. Max, who stared at Daisy like he'd found a ghost. Max, who nudged her gently and waited for her to move. Ray sat beside them, brushing Max's thick fur. "You know her, don't you?" Max's ears twitched. He lowered his head, resting it on Daisy's frail side. "She was in your past, wasn't she?" Ray whispered. "Back when you were with Tom." Ray had never asked what Max's early years were like. When they became partners, Max was already trained, already disciplined. But maybe some scars went deeper than Muscle and bone. That morning, Ray loaded Daisy and Maple gently into the back of his truck, wrapped in blankets. Max rode with them, never taking his eyes off the older dog. The closest vet was 40 minutes down winding mountain roads. Ray kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching Max sit rigid, eyes fixed on Daisy the entire time. They reached the clinic just after 9 a.m. Dr. Lacey, the town's only vet, took one look at Daisy and her face fell. "Where did you find her?" Ray hesitated. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Lacey examined Daisy first, her hands moving carefully along the dog's frail body. "She has healed-over fractures. Ribs, left hind leg, and her jaw. Looks like they were never treated." She paused. "These aren't new." Ray felt his chest tighten. Lacey continued. "Multiple old scars, small round burns. Could be cigarette burns." She looked at him, her face pale. "Ray, this wasn't just someone abandoning a dog. This was abuse, long-term." Ray clenched his fists. "I thought that, but hearing it out loud." She moved on to Maple, who had perked up slightly and even gave a tiny tail wag. "The pup's young, maybe 4 or 5 months. Underweight but salvageable." Ray nodded slowly. "Can you keep them here for a bit? Until I figure out who they are? And what happened to them?" Lacey agreed. "Of course, but Ray, this isn't a lost dog case. This is something else, something sick." Ray looked at Max, who hadn't moved. He was lying in the corner of the room, his gaze locked on Daisy like he was guarding a piece of his past. Then, without warning, Max stood up. He walked to the exam table and pressed his forehead gently against Daisy's. Sighed. Dr. Lacey gasped softly. "He knows her. I think so," Ray murmured. "I think she was part of something. Something from before I had him. Back when Tom owned him." Lacey frowned. "Tom Whitaker?" Ray nodded. Lacey single quotes, eyes dropped. "He was always intense. Quiet. I remember him bringing Max here once. Max was bleeding from the paw, but Tom wouldn't let me examine him closely. Just asked for a bandage and left." Ray's mind raced. "Do you keep records?" "Old ones, sure. Why?" "Check. For a dog named Daisy, maybe 10 years back." Lacey left briefly, then returned with a dusty folder. She flipped through pages until she stopped. "Here, August 2013. Dog brought in with minor scrapes. Golden Retriever mix. Name, Daisy, no owner listed. Found in unknown condition. Notes say the dog was brought in anonymously and picked up 24 hours later. No paperwork." Ray's voice cracked. "Ellie disappeared July 2013. He looked down at Max. "You were there, weren't you?" "Buddy?" Max's ears lowered slightly. "He remembers," Ray whispered. "He's been carrying this for a decade." Lacey handed Ray a copy of the old form. "If Daisy survived this long, maybe Ellie did too." Ray's heart clenched. That question haunted every step now. Back at the house, Ray placed a fresh bowl of water near the fireplace for Max. But Max wasn't interested. He sat in front of the hidden wall door. Just sat there, unmoving, staring at the space where the hidden shaft had been revealed. Ray crouched beside him. "You want me to go down, don't you?" Max turned to him slowly and let out the softest sound, a whine filled with something deeper than pain. It sounded like regret. Ray nodded. "Okay," he whispered. "We're going back in." Because Max wasn't just showing him the way. He was asking for closure. Ray didn't sleep that night, not really. He lay on the couch, staring at the hidden wall Max had exposed, the open shaft behind it like a mouth holding secrets. Max sat guard nearby, eyes heavy but never shutting fully. Every so often he'd glance toward the hallway as if expecting someone, or something. Ray whispered, "Who did this to you, Daisy?" By morning, a call came through the landline. Finally crackled back to life. "Dr. Lacey. She's stable. The older dog Daisy, she's resting, but there's something you should see." Ray drove fast. The sky was gray, clouds hanging low, like the world hadn't yet decided if it would weep again. Inside the exam room, Daisy lay curled on a blanket, her breathing steadier. Maple sat beside her now, alert and watching. Max, as always, lowered his head gently onto Daisy's back as soon as he entered. Dr. Lacey motioned Ray into the next room. She held up a printed X-ray of Daisy's neck. "See this?" She pointed. "It's an old scar right behind the jaw. Looks like a bite wound, deep, canines from another dog. But not a fight. It was more precise, almost surgical. Like a trained dog clamped down and held her." Ray stared. "You think Max did this?" Lacey hesitated. "If he did, it wasn't out of aggression. This wound, she survived because of it. It's possible he was ordered to hold her still." Ray's stomach twisted. Back in the main room, he crouched near Max. "Did you stop her from escaping?" Max wouldn't look at him. Ray looked at Daisy's face, old, tired, but calm. She didn't flinch when Max came near. In fact, she leaned into him now. Ray stood, hands trembling slightly. "Whatever happened back then? It wasn't just Tom. You were forced to help, weren't you, Max?" It all made too much sense. Tom had been bitter in retirement, angry at the world. But he was clever, too, obsessive, the kind of man who could build a hidden crawlspace and keep a child maybe two off the grid. Ray returned to the house that afternoon. He sat on the attic floor, staring at the rusted tin box from the crawlspace, the one that held Daisy's collar and the note. "She's still alive." Ellie had written that. He was sure of it now. And the stuffed rabbit? It wasn't just a toy. It was a message. Ray opened the box again, this time taking out the folded piece of paper completely. On the back was faint pencil writing. "Barely there. Illegible under the light. His dog helped. His dog didn't mean to." Ray froze. Max hadn't attacked Daisy. He'd been used. Forced. He wasn't a hero back then, not because he didn't want to be, but because someone used loyalty like a weapon. Ray whispered, "I'm sorry." Max didn't move. Ray sat beside him, resting his hand gently on Max's back. "You've carried this longer than anyone." Then Ray stood and looked at the open shaft in the wall. "I'm going down there," he said out loud. "Tonight." Max finally turned toward him, and for the first time in days, his tail moved. Just once, because deep inside, Max knew the past was about to be uncovered. Ray couldn't shake the weight of that note. His dog helped. His dog didn't mean to. The words haunted him as he paced the attic again, flashlight in hand. Max, close behind. Daisy and Maple were still recovering at the vet, but Max refused to rest. He moved like a dog on a mission, sniffing the air, stopping at corners, then moving again. There was something he wanted Ray to find, something left behind. Ray turned to the crawlspace one last time, shining the light on every beam, every seam in the wall. But Max didn't look there. He sat facing the far end of the attic, where an old pile of blankets and photo albums lay stacked beneath the low, slanted ceiling. Ray walked over slowly, brushing aside the blankets. He noticed something odd beneath. A large box of Christmas decorations, a floorboard, slightly warped. Not loose, but lifted just enough to catch the light. He knelt, pried his fingers underneath, and lifted. Another hidden compartment. But this one didn't hold bones or collars. This one held names. Inside was a small wooden crate, wrapped tightly in plastic. Inside the crate, he found a pink backpack, torn at the straps, a water bottle with faded stickers, a purple hairbrush with missing bristles, and a faded photo album. He opened it slowly, his breath catching in his throat. The first page showed a picture of the same little girl from the torn photo. Ellie, smiling, holding Daisy with both arms. Her handwriting, clumsy and childish, was scrawled in crayon at the bottom, "Me and Daisy, best friends forever." The next few pages were filled with more drawings, clippings, and childlike journal entries. One read, "We sleep in the dark room. Again, Daisy keeps me warm. I miss Mommy. Mr. T says I can go home when I stop asking questions." Ray stared in disbelief. Mr. T, his blood ran cold. Mr. T was Tom Whitaker, his former partner, his mentor, his friend. The man who'd given him this house. Ray's hand shook as he turned another page. Daisy didn't bite him, Max did. He told Max to hurt Daisy, so I'd stop trying to run. Max, who now lay silently nearby, let out a quiet whimper, as if he too remembered. Ray fell back against the attic wall. He hadn't just inherited a house, he had inherited a crime scene. 1. Hidden under blankets, buried beneath old friendships and faded memories. Tom had lived here after retirement alone, isolated, secretive. Everyone thought he was just a broken cop with old demons, but his demons weren't just in his head. They were in the walls. Ray took the backpack, the album, and the brush. He placed them on the floor and sat across from Max. "She loved you," he whispered. "She wrote about you. She forgave you." Even after everything. Max lowered his head to the floor. Ray reached out, gently stroking behind his ears. "You were just following orders, but you're not the same dog now. You saved those two, and now you're saving her story." He looked at the album again. The last page had a drawing, a stick figure girl, a big dog, a little puppy, and a house. Above them, in shaky letters, "Maybe someday someone good will hear us." Ray's chest tightened, because now he grabbed his phone and took photos of every page, every item. He needed proof. The town had buried this story once. He wouldn't let it happen again. He stared at the final image. Ellie's hopeful drawing. Tears welled up in his eyes. "I don't know what happened to you," he said softly. "But I swear to you, Ellie, I'm going to find out." Max let out a soft bark, quiet but steady, and in that attic full of ghosts, Ray felt something shift, for the first time in 10 years. The silence was breaking. That night, Ray stood at the mouth of the hidden shaft behind the fireplace. He held a rope in one hand, a flashlight in the other, and his heart beat hard against his chest. Max sat beside him, stiff and silent, eyes locked on the dark vertical tunnel like it was a living thing. Ray looked down. "You sure about this?" Max didn't move. Ray tied the rope tightly to the heavy fireplace column and began his descent. The walls were cold stone, damp and narrow. The light from above faded quickly as the shaft swallowed him. Dust floated like ash. The only sound was his boots scraping against rock and Max's faint whine echoing from above. After 10 feet, he touched solid ground. He turned his flashlight. It was a room. No, not a room. A cellar, hidden beneath the house, entirely off-grid. The walls were concrete, the air thick with mildew and something fouler. Something old, like rotten rust. Like silence that had stayed too long. Ray stepped forward slowly. His light landed on a child-sized mattress on the ground, molded and torn. Next to it, a rusted chain bolted into the wall. A broken collar hung from the end. Max growled above, his voice deep and soft. Ray swallowed hard. This was real. Next to the mattress was a wooden crate filled with food wrappers, torn shoes, and chewed pencils. On the far wall, faint scribbles were still visible under the dirt and dust. He stepped closer and wiped it clean with his sleeve. "My name is Ellie Mae Carter. I am not dead. Please tell my mom." His chest tightened. A cold lump formed in his throat. She had been alive down here, writing messages on the walls. Waiting to be found, he moved his flashlight further and spotted an old desk pushed against the far wall. Its drawers were locked. Ray smashed the top open with the heel of his boot. Inside was a small metal box taped shut. He ripped it open. Inside were photos, dozens. Some were surveillance photos taken from a distance. A little girl in a pink jacket, a woman on a front porch, a golden retriever in a field. Others were darker. Photos of the attic, the crawlspace, the cellar he now stood in, each labeled with dates and times. All the handwriting was Tom Whitaker's. Ray's stomach turned. This was beyond a rogue cop with PTSD. This was planned. Cataloged, organized. The last photo was a Polaroid of Daisy fresh bite wounds around her neck. Blood in her fur. Ray flipped it over. Failure replaced. His legs almost gave out. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard, the flashlight shaking in his hand. This wasn't just about Ellie. There could have been others. And then he saw it tucked behind the desk leg. A small tin LUNCHBOX. He opened it. Inside was a single cassette tape and a note. "Confession, in case I forget." Ray's hands trembled. Tom had recorded something. He pocketed the cassette and climbed out fast. When he reached the top, Max met him with wide, anxious eyes. Ray collapsed onto the floor, gasping. "We have it," he whispered. We have the proof. Max moved close and rested his head on Ray's knee. Together, they sat in the silence of the living room surrounded by memories, shadows, and the final truth waiting to be heard. Ray looked at Max. Let's finish this. The cassette tape felt heavier than it should have, like it was soaked in every lie Tom Whitaker ever told. Ray didn't wait. He dug out his old tape player from the garage, dusted it off, and shoved the cassette in. The device clicked. Then hummed. Then a sharp burst of static. And then Tom's voice. This is Tom. If you're hearing this, you already know something. Ray froze. Max looked up from his spot by the fireplace, ears raised. I didn't mean for it to go like this. Tom's voice rasped through the speaker. I was trying to save her. That's what I told myself. The courts. CPS. They were going to take her away. A pause. A long one. She told me things about her stepfather, what he did, the bruises. The night she slept in the woods with that dog, hiding. But when I reported it, they said I was overstepping. That there wasn't enough? Proof, Ray's breath caught. She begged me not to let them send her back. Begged. She ran away one night and came here. With Daisy, I should have called it in, I know, but I didn't. I told myself I was protecting her. Another pause. This time, heavier, I kept her safe. At first, but hiding a child. It changes things. I made rules, and when she broke them, I punished her. I became the thing I was protecting her from. Ray clenched his fists. His old partner's voice didn't sound sad, it sounded hollow, like the guilt had dried out into something numb. She tried to leave once. Daisy got out. That mutt? Bit me. I ordered Max to restrain her, and he did. God help me, he did what I told him. Max let out a soft groan. His eyes never left the tape player. Tom's voice turned quieter. But Ellie didn't stay gone. Not really. I found her the next day down by the creek. She was cold, pale. I buried her near the stone path. Where she used to play with Daisy. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't want... The tape clicked. Then silence. Ray stared. At the machine. No, that can't be it. He rewound the tape, hoping for more. But that was all. Max got up and paced slowly toward the attic stairs. Tail stiff. Ray sat there, stunned. Ellie was dead, and Tom buried her like she was a problem. No police report, no burial. Just a secret beneath the earth. Ray finally stood. His legs felt weak. His throat burned. He picked up the photo album again. Flipped to the last page, the one with Ellie's crayon drawing, that hope, that little house, the dog, the girl, the sun. Maybe someone good will hear us. Someone did. But too late. Ray turned to Max. You weren't the villain, Max. You were just a tool in his hand. And now, you're the one helping me put this. Right? Max sat by the door, waiting. They were both waiting for morning. Because come daylight, Ray was calling the sheriff. He was going to tell them everything. The photos, the crawl space. The confession. And when the authorities came with shovels and scanners, they'd finally find her. The next morning broke cold and still, like the mountain was holding its breath. Ray stood outside the cabin with a shovel in hand, the cassette tape in his jacket pocket, and Max at his side. The grass was wet with dew. Fog hovered low, clinging to the trees like ghosts. He didn't wait for the sheriff. He couldn't. Tom's confession had pointed him toward a single place near the stone path, where she used to play with Daisy. Ray had seen the stone path on his property before, a line of flat, moss-covered rocks that curved down through the pine trees behind the cabin like an old forgotten trail. It led to a clearing with wild flowers and tall grass, a place that felt peaceful, almost sacred. Max walked ahead, nose low to the ground. His pace slowed as they reached the clearing. Then he stopped. He stood completely still, tail stiff, eyes locked on a patch of uneven ground near a broken tree stump. Ray knew. He stepped forward, heart hammering. The soil there was different, a little sunken, like the earth had never truly settled. Ray dropped to his knees and began digging. The shovel hit roots, then damp earth, then something harder, wood. Ray's breath caught. He brushed away the dirt with his hands. Beneath the soil was a small wooden box, handmade, weathered, fitted with rusted nails. Child-sized. Max sat beside it now, quiet, his eyes full of something ancient and aching. Ray hesitated, then opened the box. Inside, wrapped in a faded pink blanket, were the fragile remains of a child, bones small and delicate. Her arms curled around something in her chest, what remained of the stuffed rabbit. Ray couldn't breathe. It was Ellie. Even in death she had held on to the only comfort she had left. He bowed his head. Tears welled up in his eyes. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Max let out a soft whimper, not loud. Just a breath of grief. Ray placed a hand gently on the edge of the box. "You deserved more than this. You deserved to grow up, to be safe, to be seen." He sat there in silence for several minutes, the wind rustling the grass around him. Then he stood. He called the sheriff. The response was too fast. By the time the deputy cars rolled up the dirt road, Ray had already printed every photo, every journal page, and burned a copy of the cassette tape. Sheriff Mendez, a tall man with tired eyes, stepped out of the cruiser. "You sure about this, Torres?" Ray nodded. "I've got everything. A body, a confession, records, and witnesses." He pointed to Max. Mendez looked down at the dog, then back at Ray. "Let's get her home." The scene was sealed off. Forensics arrived. A medical examiner took Ellie's remains with care and ceremony. The sheriff ordered a full dig of the crawlspace, cellar, and attic. Every inch of the cabin was now evidence. Ray stood on the porch, arms folded. Max sat beside him, unmoving. Mendez approached. "We pulled Tom's old files. He was flagged in a CPS complaint in 2013. But nothing came of it. Looks like he made sure it vanished." Ray stared out into the trees. "He didn't just cover it up, he built a cage for her. And when she died, he buried her like trash." Mendez nodded solemnly. "We'll reopen everything. Her mother, she's still alive, you know." Ray looked at him. "She is?" "She never stopped looking." Ray's throat tightened. "Then she deserves the truth." That afternoon, Daisy and Maple were brought back to the cabin. Daisy had improved barely, but enough to lift her head when Max came near. He sniffed her gently, then laid down beside her. Just like before, 3 survivors. Max, Daisy, and Maple. The next generation of hope. Ray sat with them on the porch as the sun dipped low behind the trees. "I think you always remembered her, Max," he said softly. "And now, the world will too. Because Ellie Mae Carter would no longer be a file number or a cold case. She would be found, she would be named, and she would be buried in the light." The next morning broke cold and still, like the mountain was holding its breath. Ray stood outside the cabin with a shovel in hand, the cassette tape in his jacket pocket, and Max at his side. The grass was wet with dew. Fog hovered low, clinging to the trees like ghosts. He didn't wait for the sheriff. He couldn't. Tom's confession had pointed him toward a single place near the stone path, where she used to play with Daisy. Ray had seen the stone path on his property before, a line of flat, moss-covered rocks that curved down through the pine trees behind the cabin like an old forgotten trail. It led to a clearing with wild flowers and tall grass, a place that felt peaceful, almost sacred. Max walked ahead, nose low to the ground. His pace slowed as they reached the clearing. Then he stopped. He stood completely still, tail stiff, eyes locked on a patch of uneven ground near a broken tree stump. Ray knew. He stepped forward, heart hammering. The soil there was different, a little sunken, like the earth had never truly settled. Ray dropped to his knees and began digging. The shovel hit roots, then damp earth, then something harder, wood. Ray's breath caught. He brushed away the dirt with his hands. Beneath the soil was a small wooden box, handmade, weathered, fitted with rusted nails. Child-sized. Max sat beside it now, quiet, his eyes full of something ancient and aching. Ray hesitated, then opened the box. Inside, wrapped in a faded pink blanket, were the fragile remains of a child, bones small and delicate. Her arms curled around something in her chest, what remained of the stuffed rabbit. Ray couldn't breathe. It was Ellie. Even in death, she had held on to the only comfort she had left. He bowed his head. Tears welled up in his eyes. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Max let out a soft whimper, not loud. Just a breath of grief. Ray placed a hand gently on the edge of the box. "You deserved more than this. You deserve to grow up, to be safe, to be seen." He sat there in silence for several minutes, the wind rustling the grass around him. Then he stood. He called the sheriff. The response was too fast. By the time the deputy cars rolled up the dirt road, Ray had already printed every photo, every journal page, and burned a copy of the cassette tape. Sheriff Mendez, a tall man with tired eyes, stepped out of the cruiser. "You sure about this, Torres?" Ray nodded. "I've got everything. A body, a confession, records, and witnesses." He pointed to Max. Mendez looked down at the dog, then back at Ray. "Let's get her home." The scene was sealed off. Forensics arrived. A medical examiner took Ellie's remains with care and ceremony. The sheriff ordered a full dig of the crawlspace, cellar, and attic. Every inch of the cabin was now evidence. Ray stood on the porch, arms folded. Max sat beside him, unmoving. Mendez approached. "We pulled Tom's old files. He was flagged in a CPS complaint in 2013. But nothing came of it. Looks like he made sure it vanished." Ray stared out into the trees. "He didn't just cover it up, he built a cage for her. And when she died, he buried her like trash." Mendez nodded solemnly. "We'll reopen everything." "Her mother, she's still alive, you know." Ray looked at him. "She is?" "She never stopped looking." Ray's throat tightened. "Then she deserves the truth." That afternoon, Daisy and Maple were brought back to the cabin. Daisy had improved barely, but enough to lift her head when Max came near. He sniffed her gently, then laid down beside her. Just like before, 3 survivors. Max, Daisy, and Maple. The next generation of hope. Ray sat with them on the porch as the sun dipped low behind the trees. "I think you always remembered her, Max," he said softly. "And now the world will too. Because Ellie Mae Carter would no longer be a file number or a cold case, she would be found. She would be named, and she would be buried in the light." Ray wasn't expecting the woman to show up in person, but she did. She stepped out of a gray sedan parked at the edge of the property, her hands trembling as she clutched an old leather purse. Her eyes scanned the cabin like it was a haunted house, and in many ways, it was. Sheriff Mendez had called her that morning. Lena Carter, Ellie's mother. Ray walked down the porch slowly, Max padding silently behind him. Lena stood frozen, staring at the woods behind the cabin, where crime scene tape still fluttered near the shallow grave. "This is where—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Ray gently nodded. "Yes, we found her, and everything she left behind." Lena covered her mouth. Her legs buckled slightly. Ray rushed forward and steadied her. "I thought," she whispered, eyes filled with tears, "I thought I'd never know." Ray didn't say anything. What could he say? Instead, he pulled a folded photo from his jacket, the one Ellie had drawn, with the house and the dogs and the sunshine. He handed it to her. "She left this behind, with her dog. And her rabbit." Lena took the page with shaking hands, tracing the childish lines with her fingers. She never liked crayons, but she always drew dogs. Max stepped forward gently. He nuzzled her hand. Lena looked down. "This is him, isn't it? The one from the tape?" Ray Tian's ED. Max didn't flinch. He sat, calm and still, as Lena knelt in front of him. "He was forced," Ray said quietly. "He saved 2 lives since then, Daisy and her pup." Lena didn't respond. She just stroked Max's fur, tears falling silently. "She wrote about him," Ray added. "Said he didn't mean to hurt her." Lena closed her eyes. "I hated Tom," she whispered. "I went to the police 100 times. Told them Ellie didn't run away. Told them she wouldn't just disappear. But no one believed me." "I do," Ray said. "I know." She replied. Ray invited her inside. She sat in the old chair by the fireplace, holding the drawing to her chest. He laid out all the evidence: photos, cassette copy, Ellie's journal pages. Lena read each one, like she was holding pieces of her daughter's soul. Then Ray brought out the last item, A Polaroid of Ellie hugging Daisy, one of the only clear close-up photos. Lena gasped softly. That's the morning she disappeared. I took that photo. She wanted to go for a walk with Daisy, said she'd be back by lunch. Ray frowned. Wait, you took it? Lena nodded slowly. Why? Ray flipped the photo over. The back had faded ink. Failure. Replaced. It was in Tom's files, he said. I assumed he took it. Lena looked down at the handwriting. That's not Tom's. That's mine. That's my photo. Ray's heart skipped. You're sure? She pointed. He must have taken it from my house after she vanished. I always wondered how it disappeared. It was framed on my fridge. Ray's mind reeled. If that photo had been stolen, then Tom had been watching her house. Maybe even entered it. It wasn't random. It was planned. Ellie's disappearance wasn't just an impulse. It was a calculated act. Ray pulled out the envelope of surveillance photos. He handed Lena the ones that showed her taken from bush. From car windows, from behind fences. She stared at them in horror. He was watching us? She whispered. For weeks, Ray said grimly. Lena broke down. Years of anger, pain, confusion, they all poured out in one long sob. Ray didn't say a word. He let her cry. Max moved closer and laid his head gently on her lap. Later, when she calmed, she looked around the cabin. She must have been so scared, she whispered. Ray nodded. But she had Daisy, and she had hope, right until the end. Lena wiped her face. I want to bury her next to my mother. Not here, not in this place. You will, Ray promised. We'll give her a proper goodbye. She nodded slowly, still petting Max. I forgive him, she said quietly. Not Tom, but Max. He was just another prisoner. Ray looked at Max's eyes, old, tired, and deep with memory. And for the first time in a long time, Max finally laid down, closed his eyes, and rested.